What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Extra-terrestrial films. Now playing Men in Black, A Quiet Place, Arrival, Prometheus. You know the difference between you and me? I make this sound good. Welcome to Corona Cinema. I'm Leon Waite. He can run down a cephalopod on foot. It's Ross.
Hello. Shut up. Sorry.
Mid-conversation.
Because I'm about to talk.
You could have said that.
Oh, that's why I said shush.
Well, you know what?
Fuck's
Maybe you
sake.
should be
Get
nicer
out.
about it.
Actually, shush. We're starting.
I'm Matty.
Good afternoon.
I'm Mason.
You alright?
And we're going to start with, who picked this? I think it was Ross. Yeah, it was Ross. Men in Black from 1997. A police officer joins a secret organization that polices and monitors extraterrestrial interactions on Earth. Directed by Barry Sonnenfeld and written by Ed Solomon, starring Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones, Vincent D'Onofrio, Linda Florentino, and Rip Torn. Oscar nominated for Danny Elfman's score, art direction, and it won for best makeup. Ross, why did you pick this film?
So, I'd seen the second and third Men in Black, but I'd never seen the first one, so I thought I might as well watch it so I can watch the original. And it works so well, and I really enjoyed the film. Because it doesn't waste too much time kind of jumping into the story, on like the origin story, because it's, Jay's kind of part of Men in Black straight away, so you're kind of straight into that story. But the film, like, there's a really good dynamic between Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith in this film, who obviously Will Smith somehow looks the same after like 20 years. But it's just the way Kay has this kind of really deadpan humor, and then Will Smith has this kind of over the top humor, which balances out quite well. It makes it funny still. But yeah, there's quite a lot of funny and like quotable moments in the film. Like when they're all kind of writing on the piece of paper in Men in Black, and then Will Smith kind of drags the table across the room, and they're all kind of like sitting there, and like Tommy Lee Jones delivering some of the jokes because he's so deadpan's funny. Like when Will Smith walks in, and he's like, meet boo boo and Bob the aliens. It's funny. But yeah, it's quite a nice ending to the film as well, with Kay kind of retiring, joining his wife, and it sets up nicely for a sequel. And yeah, it's just in general a really funny film with a good character dynamic. It kind of keeps it interesting the whole way through, and I'd say the trilogy as a whole is kind of probably some of the most underrated and not really too much spoken about comedy trilogies.
I like how it opens with like the border control apprehending what they call illegal aliens in America. That's what they're called, like people trying to get over the border illegally, and like you have that in that scene, like when you're introducing actual alien captors in the Men in Black, and just like the world building in this film, like a lot of it's just little fun details sprinkled throughout, like the idea of people within society being aliens, and like I like the bit that towards the end when he's like, yeah, Elvis is not dead, he just went home. Like little details, little fun things like that in terms of building this world. And yeah, Ross mentioned Will Smith and like the dynamic between him and Tommy Lee Jones, and I think this role kind of combines like Smith's charisma, his sarcasm, his ability to deliver these like killer one-liners, and then you got his action star quality as well. And I think this kind of combines all those elements pretty well. And then when you put that with Tommy Lee Jones, he's also like, he's a bit sardonic, but he's still funny. He's got like a dry sense of humor and that kind of like weird intensity that Tommy Lee Jones has. Like we did Natural Born Killers a few weeks ago, and he had that kind of, every now and then he'll just say something really intense. It's quite weird. It's something that he does in a lot of films, apart from No Country for Old Men, another film that we did. But at the same time, it gets across like subtly his like loneliness with the woman he was, I think, was his wife. Was he with, or just some woman that he was with? Like when he's looking on their like kind of surveillance system, and he's like basically spying on her, which is a bit creepy. But yeah, he has the power to do that. But it shows how lonely you have to be to enter into a job like this, which is one thing that's weird. Like you don't actually ever get any like idea why Jay, or Will Smith's character, like why he would just volunteer to give up his identity. Like you find out a bit about his like backstory in Men in Black 3. But like this one, you don't actually know why he joins them. I don't really care. Like it's just a fun film. It doesn't really matter. But it's a bit weird that they don't give you like any kind of like, oh yeah, I don't know, he had a bad breakup or something. His parents are dead at this point, so he just can't be asked. He'll join the Men in Black. But yeah, doesn't really matter. And other stuff I like about it is like the makeup. Obviously, won the Oscar that year. Obviously, some of the visuals haven't aged amazingly compared to what we can get now, 23 years on. But I think kind of some of the makeup and some of the designs of like just Edgar, for example, just the loose skin, just a simple thing that's just very weird and creepy. He's got as a villain, he's just got a very weird energy, and D'Onofrio, I think, does quite well in making that character pretty memorable. And it's also like a weirdly kind of not deep, but like an interesting idea about whether like, because if aliens were like among us or coming down here, like would you tell the public about it, or would you keep it concealed from them because they might panic? I think the quote is the only way these people can go about their happy lives is if they do not know about it. It's like, yes, would you have to withhold this like difficult information for people to process in order to protect them, because basically they're too dumb? I mean, he even says like, he's literally used that quote, they're too dumb to handle it, and they go as far to literally wipe your memory and give you a new one in the pursuit of keeping them away from knowing about these aliens, because they'll just go crazy. At least that's what they believe. So I think that's an interesting kind of deeper idea. I don't know if the filmmakers were trying to convey anything deep with that, but it's kind of an interesting idea. Matty, is that something you found watching it?
Yeah, it definitely is. Although all being a comedy, it does like tap into deeper aspects of the work they do, and having to give up, like be completely selfless and pursue this work for a lifetime. And then even after you've done all of that, you just erase the last, 35, 40 years of your memory. So you never even remember you did it, and you wake up from a coma. It's kind of almost like you're giving your life to something, which is quite a powerful concept for something that is a comedy. And these films, Will Smith is the heart and soul of these films. And the dynamic that he has with Tommy Lee Jones being so annoyingly but beautifully grumpy, and Will Smith being literally the other end of the spectrum, it works fantastically. And literally the films actually just get better and better, if I'm honest, because I watched all three of the films, and then I watched the fourth one just as a kind of a comparison, and it did lose a lot of the magic. And I think it was just losing the magic through not having that duo, because you in the fourth one, the two leads in there, they both have more or less the same energy. They're both equally vibrant, equally determined, and equally like absorbed by the universe they're in, compared to Will Smith, who's really absorbed by everything and really interested in everything, and Tommy Lee Jones is just indifferent. And I think there's just that difference, that conflict, even though it's like a jovial one, just works really well for this film. And yeah, as soon as you take Will Smith away from the film, it just doesn't work. So I don't really like that they tried a fourth one, but it's nice that they did, because you can see how important Will Smith is to these films. And another thing is the films are openly corny, and it's not afraid to like poke fun at itself and like hit things on the head like Elvis, and I think even in the third one talk about Andy Warhol, and it is really quite interesting how they do all these things. And the CGI isn't the best, but in a way it doesn't feel bad that it is bad. When you see like the cockroach in the end scene, and it's kind of like it's nothing to the things we can do today, but because it's an openly corny film as it is, everything's like kind of like silver retrograde, like space age and aliens. It's just a far out concept anyway, that it just works. Even today the films still work. And yeah, I think these films, in terms of like an alien comedy, there's nothing really that comes close, and they are some of the probably the strongest comedies that came out in that decade anyway. So yeah, that's all I have to say about the films.
I do think the plot is pretty weak for this film. Watching it again this time, like just the fundamental, what they're trying to achieve, what the villain's plan is, and how they're trying to stop him, the way that kind of progresses isn't particularly interesting, which I don't really care about, because it's more just about the like personalities of the two leads and their dialogue and just individual like moments that happen with the film. But in terms of the actual plot, and like the villain's plan and stuff. I don't find that to be particularly well done or pretty interesting. It kind of reminded me of The Nice Guys, which is another, not similar in any way other than it's two quote unquote detectives trying to solve something or trying to thwart a villain, but just more just about the personalities of these two guys in the leads and their kind of dynamic between them. Mason, is that something you thought watching the film, that the actual villain's plan wasn't particularly interesting in it was more just about enjoying the characters, enjoying the humor than the actual plot?
Yeah, I think that sort of storyline where I think it's like a royal family member gets killed from one of these like alien planets and stuff. It has no weight. Like when you're watching the film, it's just like it happens, and it doesn't really convey the importance of that to the audience or why we should view that as being like so detrimental and so like key to what's going to happen next in the film. It kind of just happens, and I don't know. I feel like it should, in a normal film, it should detract from like the film in general because it is a weak storyline, like you said. But because this is so sort of like cheesy and just classical, it doesn't matter. Like you kind of like push that aside. Like you're not really there to find out this storyline that's happening between all of the like the aliens and stuff like that. You're just there to see Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones interact in this sort of like this universe that is so similar to ours, but yet, like you said, you have aliens coexisting with people. So I think because that's more so the focus of the film, where they want the audience to enjoy, that's what they want the audience to enjoy the most. I think they've sort of left way too much when it comes to the alien storyline to make it interesting really for us as the viewer.
I don't think it's quite an underrated score for this film. Obviously, it was Oscar nominated. Danny Elfman's score. But I think it really works. It's very upbeat, very bubbly, very kind of it feels authentic to the film. It doesn't really get talked about as like a kind of great sci-fi film or a comedy film's score. Ross, is that something you liked about the film? The music in it?
Yeah, because realistically, it does actually really drive the film. It actually works really well. But I think what I really like is the in the credits where they're Will Smith's Men in Black, when that starts playing. It's just one of them songs that just gets stuck in your head for days. I really like that. But yeah, as you said, it doesn't really get talked about, and I think it kind of should more because it really is a good part of the film. Yeah.
One thing as well, like so, there's some lines in films just stay in my head for some reason. It's really like just random quotes that aren't really like particularly prominent or anything. They just stay in my head. So you know that bit where Edgar, the villain, quote unquote villain, he goes to it's like a postcard stand, and he throws the guy over. He's like I can't remember what he was there doing. It was like a postcard stand on the street, and the guy he's asking him where to find dead people. That's it. And that's when the guy's like, I don't know, the city morgue. That's just one like random quote that's just stayed in my head. That's in my head for the last 15 years. Just very random.
Yeah, you said about memorable quotes. Our group chat from about 7 years ago was called "The Last Suit You'll Ever Wear." I didn't know that was from this film. So when they said it, I was like, oh my days. I was like, it all makes sense. It's taken me 7 years to clock, but yeah, it was worth it.
Lol, what the hell? Okay. Let's get some ratings. Start with you, Ross.
I gave it a 7.8.
Mason?
I gave it a 7.
Matty?
I gave it an 8.5, just in terms of looking at the category it's in. Try and find a better film or a better trilogy. But yeah, maybe that's overzealous.
7.6. Okay, moving on to my pick, A Quiet Place from 2018. In a post-apocalyptic world, a family is forced to live in silence while hiding from monsters with ultra-sensitive hearing. Directed by John Krasinski, who also rewrote Brian Wood's and Scott Beck's original screenplay, starring Krasinski, Emily Blunt, Noah Jupe, and Millicent Simmons. He was Oscar nominated for sound editing. Just pretty blown away, to be honest. It's such a unique experience to see this. It's one of those you needed to see in a cinema just for how silent it was, because it's never ever going to be like that in any other film, where people are just like, they can't even take a bite of their popcorn because it's like, oh, everyone will hear it at all times because it's just pretty much quiet. Like there's a score and there's a few loud moments, but majority of the time it's just dead silence. Now it's just kind of a really different way to watch a film in the cinema, and something I'm thankful to have seen it. Got to see it twice in cinema, and both times it was really good. And yeah, watching it even at home this time still had the same, well, not the same, but a similar impact in just how well crafted it is, how well paced it is. Only an hour and a half, gets everything in there, gets everything you need in there. A unique alien. Can't say any good dialogue, there's not a lot of dialogue in it, but doesn't really need to tick that box in the case of this film. And it just kind of disarms you by having it be so silent, because when you do get a sound, like, it's really potent, and you're kind of like, whoa, fucking hell, like, forgot we were allowed to make noise in the world. Even like things like the baby's heartbeat at one point. Like Emily Blunt's character is pregnant and then ends up having the baby. Don't know why you'd have another baby in this world. Like, it's a bit of a myth. Like, just keep it in your pants in it. Like, could have died. But yeah, when he puts the thing, camera goes close to her heartbeat, close to her chest, and you hear the heartbeat of the baby, and it's like pounding because there's no other sound in the world. Like, it makes it more profound when you hear these little sounds. And other stuff as well, like having a deaf kid as part of the family. It's another way it just added to the kind of atmosphere, because you have like a world with no sound, and it's even more effective because she can't even hear anyway. When the aliens do come, she can't sense the danger. When the aliens, like at one point, the aliens like right behind her, and she can't sense the danger because of her hearing impairment. And that's another, like, it's a different soundscape when you're hearing it through her ears. Like, even more different when there's no sound around. It's pretty quiet, but then you go into her kind of mindset, and it's even more quiet because you can hear it through her hearing aid. So it just adds another little layer to the film. And the bit where she's in the bath, when she finally lets out that scream, that moment, that's when, like we were saying just before we started, like, kind of forget that there's a score in this film. I thought that scene is where the score is at its best, like building up to her screaming with the fireworks and everything. And when the fireworks go off, then the score stops, goes silent. Then she just kind of sat there and just unleashes this like wild scream. It's really satisfying, not gonna lie, just to hear that kind of noise in that moment. You felt relief for her, because she, like, imagine having to give birth. Obviously we can never actually know what the pain is like, but I imagine it's pretty hard to go through it and not make any noise. So that is really cathartic scream. And it's also just like a good parenting movie, because they're just trying to prepare their kids, like they're trying to give their kids like the skills to survive in this world. So normal parents, you're trying to just prepare your kids to go out there into the world by yourself and be able to make a living and know how to do basic things and all that kind of stuff, and teach them the correct morals. In this film, it's obviously a bit more extreme, but it's still the same kind of ethos of just preparing them with the skills they need to go out there and survive in this world where make any noise, the aliens will come and get you. So just a good parenting movie in that sense as well. And then you have the main parenting moment with John Krasinski sacrificing himself for the two kids, and the little girl realizing, because obviously you have that moment at the start where she kind of feels responsible for their littlest kid, him getting snatched by the alien because she gave him the batteries for the little rocket thing. So she's kind of thought, my dad doesn't love me because I made this error and we've lost a kid. So there's that issue there throughout the film. And then you have the moment at the end where he sacrifices himself and she realizes, okay, he was always there for me. So that was also pretty emotional. But yeah, really, really strong film. Just still so mad that it's Jim from The Office who executed this. Matty, what did you make of your latest viewing of A Quiet Place?
Yeah, solid film. I've seen it quite a few times now, and again, the rewatch was refreshing. It's one of them ones you actually have to watch the screen, otherwise I think for the first 30 minutes you won't even notice there's a film playing, because there's not really a damn sound in it. But then saying that, the sound design is the best part of the whole film, like especially towards the end, like the ticking of the egg timer is like one of the most crystal clear, minute sounds in the whole thing, and then it gets really, really loud, and it just absorbs you. Like you get really hesitant at just the smallest sounds, and the film does kind of like give you a certain level of anxiety, because if you think how bleak life in that kind of world would be, that you can't you can't talk, you can't make any noise at all, and yet you're expected to function and operate like this at all times. It just kind of shows you how, well, I know it's not real, but like hypothetically, how meticulous and persevering humans can be. Like John Krasinski and Emily Blunt being parents of these kids and managing to raise them, keep any of them alive, even themselves alive, is an achievement. And then the fact that they carry the guilt of losing their youngest. It's just, yeah, it's really powerful stuff. And the acting itself works really well. I know Ross doesn't like kids and stuff, and one of the girls is really annoying, but I'll give it to her. She's actually going through some stuff as well, but it works excellently, and there isn't really a fault I really have with the film. Even the opening, the little, I think it's like a 12-minute sequence ending with the kid getting snatched off the road, is literally, it can't really get any better. And I am interested to see what they do with the prequel. I believe they're going to tell the story of how everything happened. So John Krasinski will be making another feature in the film again, which is good, rather than doing a sequel. I think there's more to say with a prequel. So that I'm interested for that when that actually comes out. I think it's been delayed due to coronavirus. But yeah, the film, I don't have a wrong thing to say about it. I don't see how it could be better in any way. And yeah, it's just a horribly scary concept. I think the only other scariest thing would be Bird Box, which is where they can't look at anything. Because I feel like humans are more visual than we are reliant on our hearing. But then the actual physical making the sound, yeah, horrible stuff. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Bird Box is bad as well. But I like the contrast of Michael Bay producing this film as well. The most loud, bombastic filmmaker in the world, and he's producing the quietest film pretty much ever to come out. So I like that kind of contrast in a meta kind of way. And yeah, you mentioned the death of the kid at the start. That was just really well done as well. Because it says that was like, I think that was the clip they released before the film came out. So a lot of people would have seen that. And when you saw that, so I would have seen that on Great. They would have played that clip on Graham Norton, and it's just so strange to see, like when the kid's about to be snatched, when the rocket makes the noise, and then Emily Blunt has to like cover her mouth because obviously you can't scream in that moment when your kid is about to be killed. You just can't scream. It's such a strange idea and a weird kind of feeling to have. So everything about that was just really well done. Ross, what are your thoughts on the film?
Yeah, so like, as you said just then, like literally in like the first scene is, well, then her getting the batteries, and him dying, and this kind of just scene at the start, even here, just really well establishes the rest of the film, because straight away you know how big this threat is, and you already know straight away what will happen if you make any noise. So it kind of sets you up for you to jump into the middle of them during this like apocalypse, rather than doing it from the start, which I think works really well. And I think it works so well as a film because it's got this kind of Jaws effect where you don't really see the aliens that much. And because you barely see them and it doesn't really focus on the aliens, it focuses more on the family itself. And that gives you time to develop them. Also, so yeah, as I say, given this kind of Jaws effect where it makes the aliens more scary because, yeah, and it works well. And a lot of kind of the suspenseful parts of the film really pays off because of the way the sound is designed and everything. And I think that Emily Blunt's performance in this film is so good, and like that part where she's giving birth, she really steals the show of this bit. And yeah, and considering this is Krasinski's directing debut as well, he's done so well with what he's done. Like, if you heard, I think you both said, Jim from The Office making a horror film, you'd think, oh, it's probably not going to be great, is it? But it works so well, and he's done such a good job on this.
Yeah, Ross mentioned Emily Blunt. We talked about her in Looper a couple of weeks ago, and she was like really good in that. And in this film, hasn't got any dialogue to be able to showcase her talents, but still demonstrates just what a really remarkable actress she is. Still not yet to be nominated for an Oscar, but I think that will come at some point. Mason, were you impressed with what she was able to do with just her body language, essentially?
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of it's a shame that she wasn't even nominated for this film for like her acting ability, because she really does like embody how I think a mother would act like in this situation. Like you even have like these nice like heartfelt moments when she's like, I think she's doing like she's like teaching like the kid like maths or some shit, I don't know, and she balances so well between like she's in this like, apocalyptic world at the moment, and she's still able to still be like caring and stuff like that, whilst also being aware that at any moment someone makes a noise, like yeah, they could fucking die. And like Ross said, with the scene of her in the bath, that's I think that's the scene that my like brain immediately thinks of when I think of A Quiet Place, because it's just that look on her face when she's literally like sweating, she's holding it in, and then literally as soon as she hears that first firework, her lips just like explode and she's just like screaming. But no, I think her acting, yeah, in this film is great. I think every scene she's in is well acted. Even we said as well at the beginning bit with the airplane or whatever it is when it makes a noise, you can see the emotion in her face where she knows for well her son is about to die basically, and yeah, she can portray that with, like you said, a film with basically no dialogue. I think like because of the acting skill sort of throughout, they're really able to show so much emotion, and I think that's what makes a film such like a joy to watch, because realistically with no dialogue you shouldn't be able to connect with the characters as much as you can, but yeah, the film hits it perfectly. When I watched the film this week, I started to notice a few things that I didn't really like about the film, which was a shame, because I think I kind of take it for granted for being so sort of unique and achieving so much with like no dialogue and stuff. But I personally do not like the daughter storyline at all. I don't see why she's so disconnected from her family when they don't really show any signs of pushing her away after she literally is the reason that like their son is dead. Like that, yeah. And I don't really like her acting either, and she really like detracts me away from the film. Yeah, I don't know if you lot disagree or if you like her, but I think she is a very weak point of the film, not just through her acting, but also the way she's written.
Yeah, I completely agree. I find her really like annoying because, firstly, I don't know why she would give her brother the batteries. Maybe it's because she's deaf and she doesn't. I don't know, but why should give him to basically get him killed in the first place? But then her dad literally trying to make her a hearing aid because she's deaf, and she's just being a bitch about it. I don't really understand like what the point in that is, but yeah, I really disliked her.
In her defense, she doesn't give him the batteries. She just gives him the like rocket toy, and then he picks up the batteries. But yeah, yeah, the actress is kind of annoying, but I think it's pretty understandable. Like we did Hereditary last week or the week before. We have a kind of similar situation where a sibling is responsible for the death of another sibling, kind of, but a bit more direct in Hereditary. But I can understand her feeling disconnected from that point on, knowing if she hadn't given him the rocket, her brother, her parents' son would still be here. So I feel like you would be. I don't know how old she is, maybe like 14 or something. I feel like you would still carry that burden with you. I don't know. One tiny thing I didn't like was after she gives birth, and then Krasinski comes in, and there's like the blood. There's the blood. He thinks, oh, maybe she's died. That's all well done. But yeah, the hand on the glass, like just a really cheap jump scare. That was like a tiny thing that just stood out. I was like, yeah, you didn't need that. I didn't need that in terms of adding an effect to it. Like just him seeing her would have had the emotional weight and the kind of surprise or whatever. So yeah, that's one tiny thing, but otherwise a really, really strong film. And I'll give this, doing the ratings now, I'll give this an 8.3. Matty?
I also have given this an 8.3.
Mason?
Yeah, I mean, I saw issues sort of this time around, but I think it's still a really strong film and it's so unique. So yeah, I gave it an 8.1.
Ross?
Yeah, really enjoyable film. I gave it an 8.2.
Okay, moving on to Mason's pick, Arrival from 2016. A linguist works with the military to communicate with alien life forms after 12 mysterious spacecraft appear around the world. Directed by Denis Villeneuve and written by Eric Herser. Hearst, starring Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and Forest Whitaker, nominated for 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay, but it only won for sound editing. Mason, why did you pick this film?
So I think I watched this for the first time about a year and a half ago, and in my head I said I understood it when I first watched it. I was like, oh, it's so good, it's sick. But watching it back, I definitely didn't understand it the first time I watched it. But I think it's just a really good film. I think when you first read the synopsis and it's like about teaching like aliens like another language or some shit, it sounds really boring, and you feel like you shouldn't enjoy it. But here I am, like this 2-hour film, I'm like hooked, trying to understand how you'd teach like an alien language like back to yourself and shit like that. I don't know. I think Amy Adams' performance is quite good in this film as well. Jeremy Renner's, I don't really rate that much, but I think I really enjoyed sort of the story. The twist at the end is really good, and it's a film that when you watch back for the second time, you pick up on so many hints to where you're like, when you first watch it, you're definitely led to believe that her child has died at the beginning, obviously, and then she's sort of living with that afterwards. But yeah, second time around, I really enjoyed it. I understood the whole idea of that they were there to give them this gift of like, when you understand their language, you experience time like in a non-linear way or some shit. I think that's it's a really smart film. It's quite unique, I think, and I found it really refreshing to not have an alien that's like a threat. It was just sort of there, and it gave you a quite like realistic human response as to how the world would deal with it. Like you see riots in some places when they first see it and stuff like that, and then the way that the world would communicate the progress they make with each other, and you would have one aggressive state that would begin to attack and stuff like that. So yeah, I think all around there's so much that's positive about this film, and yeah.
Just the fundamental, like the way like it tackles like alien communication and like trying to coordinate like an approach as a whole planet, like that's just completely unique. Usually it would just be aliens rock up to probably America, and all we can already communicate with them. Maybe they have like a communication device or something, like a universal translator or something like that, or it's just whatever, they speak English, whatever, deal with it. These are the rules of this world. Whereas this is like, no, it'd actually be quite hard to communicate with beings from another planet. So they had to find a way to do that. And then it kind of just becomes like a procedural of a film, because you're just trying to establish a way to communicate, and it's all done in like a logical, interesting way. Like, yeah, because like you say, like she's a linguistics professor, not someone you'd expect, and a female as well, not someone you'd expect to be leading a sci-fi alien movie. And it's just her using her skills as an intellectual, as someone who understands language and how to communicate, using that to find out how to converse with these aliens. And that first meeting with the aliens, again as well, are unique. You don't see a lot of them. You don't see close up their kind of like flesh or anything. Even now, it'd be hard to describe what these aliens kind of look like. But that first meeting is done so well. Like I love the cinematography with the like the screen, and how it's a really strange environment. The bright white screen and the way they squirt the things out and it comes out onto the glass panel wherever it is. Like it's so well done. Like you almost feel the awe that the characters are feeling in that moment. I find it's like, whoa, like the music and the sound editing adds to that as well. And one thing with the camera I really liked was how it like conveyed how lonely she was at the start. Like when she pulls up slowly to this like secluded house in the middle of nowhere. She sleeps clutching her pillow, and you think, because at the start obviously you're thinking her daughter has died. You think that's happened already. So it kind of adds to like the feeling of loneliness. Like she's clutching her pillow because she hasn't got her daughter or her partner. And then when she gets on the helicopter and goes to the alien base or whatever, like you have a shot, the camera's coming through her window and showing the helicopter as it's leaving to show like, yeah, she's going on an adventure now. She's not going to be as lonely, as unfulfilled. So I like that. Just one bit of direction. But yeah, the main thing though is the like philosophical question of whether you proceed down a road that's going to yield like some joy in terms of you have this time of your new husband and a daughter that you have for I can't remember what age she dies, maybe like 12 or something. But you're gonna go down this road, but it's gonna end in like crippling pain. Like you're gonna lose your husband. He's gonna walk off as soon as your daughter's ill. I think he just Jeremy Renner. It's like, nah, yeah, fuck that. And then your daughter's gonna die at such a young age, and she decides, yeah, I'm gonna carry on regardless because it's worth the experiences with the daughter. She's already got those memories. But yeah, it's just a really interesting philosophical question. Ross, where do you come down on the idea of, if you know this is going to end in like proper pain, proper heartbreak, would you still do it knowing you still have like a bit of joy, a bit of happiness with your daughter, for example, or any other situation similar?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's also comes down to kind of what if they've literally shown you that that's like the future, then why try and fight it? It's like That's So Raven. They just try and stop it whenever she sees the visions, but then it always happens anyway. So I imagine that's what might happen if they did go down that road somehow. But yeah, I mean, when I first went into this film, because I'd never seen it before, when I first went into it, I thought it was just going to be like a generic sci-fi film. I wasn't really thinking much of it, but I was blown away by it. Like, first thing I kind of thought when they first go and see it, it's definitely giving me some kind of like 2001 vibe, like the shots and stuff and the feel of it. But yeah, it's really kind of more realistic view of how the world would deal with this situation, which I think also adds to it. And yeah, especially like an American sense of view where people worldwide have no idea what's going on, but they'll just protest and complain anyway. And they'll just complain about the government and how they're handling the situation, even though they don't really have any idea what's going on, which actually happens. So, yeah. And I kind of had to, because it's the first time I saw it, I kind of had to think a lot about what kind of it all meant, kind of time travel stuff. And I came to an understanding in the end about kind of how, because their language doesn't have it, because our language has a start and an end, theirs doesn't, because it's a circle. So there's no kind of beginning or end to their language, which means there's also no beginning or end to their time, which is why they can time travel, I think, is how it works. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think I really like the scene where they first go inside the UFO and it's really creepy and you're kind of just anxious for them. And Amy Adams does a really good job at kind of conveying this through her performance, and at times not even saying much, just through her kind of expressions and yeah, the performance. And yeah, I was really blown away by this film, and not what I was expecting, but really enjoyed it.
The actual like mechanics of how this language works, and like, the idea of time being non-linear because of the way their language works. Like, I'll never actually understand how that could work. Like, further on the Wikipedia page, which I'll read for every film, like there's like a section about like how this film was responded to by like academic people, and they're like, it's pretty spot on in terms of the way they approach like linguistics in the film. I'll never actually understand what they're like. Try to read what they were talking about in terms of how it's accurate, and it's a bit too over my head. But Matt, is there anything that you found that was interesting? The way they approach linguistics, is that anything that interests you or you understand in any way?
That is something I do want to do a little bit more reading on, about the actual how, not in terms of linguistics, but how the beings that were more or less fourth dimensional beings that experience time much differently to us, how that would actually work if it could work. But what you do say about the linguistics and these really quite difficult concepts, let's be honest, they're very difficult to swallow, considering our perception of time is completely linear. And to introduce someone that experiences all things at all times, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, because everything, like we say, our entire language, our entire thought process is based around what we know. This film makes it really, really accessible to swallow these concepts and introduces them slowly and methodically, and in a way that you can understand to most audiences. I mean, at least I think I understand it to the point that I get how it works. I haven't got my head completely wrapped around it, but I'm a hell of a lot closer to it than if I was just to pick up a book about, in terms of like quantum mechanics or whatever. The film itself works beautifully, showing you one thing and you just assume that it's happening in logical order, which is more or less the moral of the damn film. And it's really eerie and ominous all the way through. I don't think there's a shred of color until halfway through anyway, so it kind of feels like a DC superhero film, but it's actually good, which is quite interesting. And the film is also quite grounded as well, which is interesting, because it's also focusing on the dynamics between people and the aliens actually being an external force forcing people to work together, and how it's so in the brink and it almost doesn't work. Is tantalizingly annoying how stupid some people can be. And I think the American military in films don't have the best rap for responding to UFO incidents. And also, the film has a positive emotional message that just because something happens that is painful at times, there are good experiences that come from it, and that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen, because that helps you grow as a person. So that the fact that she knew her daughter would die before she even had her doesn't mean that she didn't decide to not have the daughter. I don't know if she stays with the husband or not, but she decides, well, I'm still going to enjoy the moments that last, and even though there's pain that comes with it, I'm going to run with it. Which is, well, you look at some of the other films that we look on the podcast, and they don't really have that similar message. Like I compare it to Seven, and it's like a lot of bad shit happens in Seven, and there's not really any rhyme or reason other than it's going to happen again, and we have to fight it nonetheless. And yeah, I'm sure I had other points, but they escape me at the moment, so that's all I have to say about it.
I feel like you can imagine the if they ever have an argument. So obviously she's going to stay with Jeremy Renner and have this kid. If they ever have an argument before having the kid, it's like she knows deep down like he's going to run off as soon as she gets ill. Like that's a bit tense. So I don't know how it would actually work. But yeah, it really is a positive emotional message, and I like how it's a twist, but obviously it's hinting at it throughout the film. And when it's kind of explicitly said, I think they're not there. When it's like explicit, it's because it's not until it's before the end. It's like 20 minutes before the end where she kind of outlines like what this is. Like it's non-linear, so she knows what's going to happen. Like it's not like a big here's the twist kind of thing like you'd have in like an M. Night Shyamalan film or something. It's not like here's the twist. It's just slowly built until the moment where you understand and everything kind of adds up. So I like the way it's done in that sense. And because obviously it provides like loads of little hints, because it's set like to the point where you're kind of, I don't think I was, because I'm just very passive. When I watch films, I'm quite passive. I'm not really picking up on all the hints that they're giving me the first time I watch it. So even when she's like, oh, your dad was a scientist, and my husband was a scientist, that's kind of just pointing directly at the guy who's there, and they get a few moments, her and Jeremy Renner, where there's kind of a flicker of like a romance kind of thing, not explicit, but like a little flicker where they have a connection. So yeah, I like everything about the way that's done. And linking back to what we were talking about in Men in Black, like the idea of how people would react if they knew that aliens were around. Ross touched on it, but you have like all this looting and like these cults who fear this is like the fulfillment of some like ominous prophecy, these aliens landing and everyone's going to die and stuff like that. You have humanity reacting in a kind of irrational, hysterical way. So it kind of proves the Men in Black's point. You got to keep it from them, otherwise they're going to react like this. But do we think that humanity would actually react like this? Do you think that, Mason?
Yeah, like I said before, I think it does offer like a really sort of realistic human response to where like you would have different nations respond in different ways, where they would be united at first, but then the public themselves, you can't kind of control how they act. And I think what's good is that I think I don't know what they're called, the pods or something. They land in very like random locations as well. Like the American one's very lucky because it's like on some open field somewhere. But others, if they're in like a built up area, you're clearly gonna have more like disturbance and like unrest within the public. So yeah, I think it captures how we would react to these random like things just floating down and just chilling there for a while. And is it China in the film who has the response where they want to like blow it up and stuff? But I was like, okay, great. So we always have like the Russian spy, but then we have to have America like having a dig basically like at China just to be like, here they go, like the aggressors. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. But other than that, I think it's a very I think it's a very good representation of what of how the people react.
One bit I did like was just like this was like a random bit of exposition from Jeremy Renner in like the middle of the film. I can't remember what he's saying in it. Just randomly, he does a bit of like voiceover in the middle of the film, which is just a bit weird and kind of took me out a bit. Just like one little tiny thing that I don't know why it was there. Don't know why they did, because I feel like the information wasn't even that important. Like it couldn't have been conveyed in a better way, and in a way that wasn't too long. So yeah, just a bit a small note in the middle of the film that detracts it slightly for me. But anything else?
Yeah, I was basically wanted to ask. I was basically wanted to ask if we was all in Amy Adams' position, would you or wouldn't you have the child?
I'm not gonna fuck Jeremy Renner if that's what you're asking.
As I said earlier, it's like That's So Raven. You just kind of see the vision, and then she tries to stop it, and everything goes wrong. So you might as well just bloody go for it anyway.
No, I feel like I couldn't. Like what I said earlier about them having like arguments and her bringing up the fact that he left her when they're dying, when their child was dying. I feel like it would just be on your mind. You'd have to repress, and you like she's experiencing time in a non-linear way constantly. I feel like that would just be too hard to live your life. It would be overwhelming for your brain. So I'd probably kill myself. Yeah.
I think the idea of the film is the language is a gift, and she's going to teach it to other people. So, like, the real question would be, would she teach that language to her kid so the kid could realize that, oh shit, I'm going to die in like 8 years kind of time. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit bleak all around.
Should we get some ratings? Okay, Mason?
I think it's a really strong film. It's really unique. I give it an 8.6.
Ross?
Yeah, as Mason said, really, really unique. And good performance from Amy Adams as well. So I gave it an 8.4.
Matty?
Yeah, I gave it an 8.4. It's quite strong.
Yeah, we didn't really go deep on Amy Adams, but I thought, yeah, she's really strong as well. Probably her best performance that I've seen. And yeah, I gave this an 8.7. Okay, final film, Matty's pick, Prometheus from 2012. Following clues to the origin of mankind, a team finds structure on a distant moon, but they soon realize they are not alone. Directed by Ridley Scott and co-written by Damon Lindelof and John Spates. Don't know. Starring Noomi Rapace, Logan Marshall Green, Michael Fassbender, Charlize Theron, Idris Elba, Guy Pearce, fucking everyone. And it was Oscar nominated for his visual effects. Matty, why'd you pick this film?
Okay, it's quite clear I've picked probably the most hated film on this list. And this film is like, it's subject to quite a lot of controversy and a lot of hate from people who are both Alien fans, because it's not the prequel they're expecting, and the hate from people who aren't Alien fans, who didn't even know it's going to be about Alien films because of the amount of unanswered questions that the film leads. So either way, I think it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to find something you don't like about this film, which is brilliant. So we're all united. But the thing is, when I first watched this film, I don't think I'd even seen Alien or any of the Alien films. And I wasn't aware that this film was even meant to be a prequel to those films. And I don't think it really is meant to be anyway. Ridley Scott talks about the film is at least 2 or 3 films away from being an Alien prequel. So he always had in mind that we were going to build towards the Alien films. But there isn't even a xenomorph in these films. There's one in a post-credit scene that isn't necessarily part of the Alien franchise. It's just there to like tempt, because they weren't sure if they were going to get a sequel out of this film anyway. But when I saw the trailer to this film, it was what the trailer heavily worked its theme upon was the creation of mankind and this mystery and where we actually came from. And it hinted at these engineers off-world. And I think what I take mostly from this film is that the sense of mystery of where we came from, the fact that they found these tombs that had engravings of a star chart that was far out of the view of any human eye. And these were all found in civilizations separated by centuries, even thousands of years, some of them, and they all pointed to the same place, and it seemed to be an invitation from beings that were much larger than themselves. So right away from there, that was like enough to hook me. And I really enjoyed kind of like following the rabbit trail of going to this planet, thinking that this planet would be where human life was created, and it turns out it's not even where human life is created. It's a military facility. And there's a lot to go into just with the plot, but we're not here to talk about and explain the film. We're just here to kind of review it. So the themes that I really enjoyed from it were, so the theme of mystery and human creation was the thing that resonated with me really strongly. Another thing to talk about, which separates it from the old Alien films, is that the crew of Prometheus are mostly thinkers, because they're going out there to find the creators of some sort. So everything they're talking about is kind of big picture stuff, big themes, stuff that people don't really talk about, as opposed to Alien, because Alien had a crew of working class people doing a job that most people would rather not do. So they talked about small scale things, working class things, and the people felt much more real and grounded. And these conversations, these interactions were happening to the backdrop of an extraterrestrial being or experience that they weren't expecting to have, which we see in a lot more films more successfully. And then when you look at other films, which then make the aliens the main subject, look at, let's say, Aliens 3, Aliens Resurrection, Alien versus Predator, these films bombed heavily and gave the franchise a bad name. So here, this is where they're trying to introduce human dynamic relationships to kind of kickstart the franchise again. Another thing that I found really quite interesting was the nature of David, who is also a callback to the Alien films, having an android on the ship. David he's an android, and his motives are just a mystery in the film, especially when you look at the next film in line. I know we're not looking at Alien Covenant, but I kind of feel these works have to be looked at together. And David is one of the most interesting characters in this whole film, because he's the only one who has been created and has the privilege to speak to his makers. And the whole film is about trying to find your maker. So they're seeing how David doesn't really find much satisfaction in meeting his own makers, but they're expecting to be having so many answers if the humans find their makers, and the reality just isn't there either. And the teasing of the engineers is also enticing. You never really get any full explanations from the engineers, and that's where the film comes kind of under scrutiny, because it doesn't answer any questions. And then before moving on, also the in-your-face gore. Now that Ridley Scott actually has the animatronics and all the graphic design, all of the makeup that he wants, you can make some really horrible stuff. And I think the pregnancy scene, where she has to cut the little cephalopod or whatever the damn thing is out of her belly, and then escape from it. That's probably one of the most just intrusive scenes in the whole thing. It's horribly good. And admittedly, there's a huge amount to nitpick with the film, which is mostly down to Ridley Scott, which is a shame, because the original script by John Spaihts works really, really well. And then Ridley Scott removed certain parts of the film, which just left it open to nitpicking. So a lot of the things that people have problems with, there were perfect explanations for, and then Ridley Scott removed them for the sake of runtime and other stuff that just escapes most people, leaving the film open to just being destroyed from either side by critics. But the real theme of Prometheus is more or less a question: if the human race was a creation of alien genetic engineering, and it's not a godly creation, how would that affect the views of the people? And it kind of lightly touches upon this, but the only problem is the film doesn't really stick to that one theme, and it just goes kind of AWOL, looking at the origin of mankind, evolution, faith, religion, ancient aliens, death, life, and life thereafter, creation, what is a soul, and then also goes into androids, whether androids have souls, and is there a god? So the film's trying to do too much, but I still really like the film, and I think Michael Fassbender, for me, just stands out perfectly, and especially what this film goes on to build in Alien Covenant. Doesn't necessarily make the best films ever, but just in terms of the ideas that it gets you thinking, and not everything having to have an answer, I think that's kind of needed in a film, and we don't have to explain everything.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting an alien, a proper alien prequel. It's going to explain everything that happened in that film, that kind of thing. That was never this is the first time I watched it. I was never expecting that, so I was willing to watch it just on its own terms, and I liked it overall. Like you mentioned like the body horror and things like that. I thought that a lot of that stuff was really effective. Like the kind of snake alien thing that breaks. Who's Rafe Spall? Rafe Spall, one of the other guys. It like breaks his arm. It goes into his suit, breaks his arm. Then there's a point where it goes into the suit and it like spews like acid blood onto his. I think it spews onto his face, doesn't it? And it like melts, kind of thing. So all that stuff was cool. And like the alien cesarean, which obviously a callback to their first Alien film. Like that was sick. That was just really well done. Just really satisfied in a gruesome way. Like the lighting in that scene was just the lighting, the sound, everything about that scene was just really well done. And a good way to kind of reinvent what Ridley Scott obviously did with the first film with the chest bursting scene, which is like one of the most iconic scenes in cinema. And aside from that, like I like the production design, everything about the planet looked cool. The visuals are really great. But yeah, it's interesting, Matt, you said that Ridley Scott took out a lot of stuff, like a lot of detail. Because yeah, it was weird. Like I think this film's like 2 hours, and I got like an hour and a half in, and I was like, well, they haven't really. It doesn't seem like there's enough time to wrap this all up, kind of thing. And because it kind of feels like it's just missing the middle. Like you have the first act. It's set in here are the aliens. You have a few moments, then all of a sudden we're at the third act. We're just racing to try wrap a load of stuff up. So it was kind of weird in that way, like structurally. But like, overall, I still enjoyed watching it. Like, yeah, it's not perfect in the way it's like constructed, and kind of the main obstacle for me is just like Matty finds the mythology and all that stuff kind of interesting. Like in this film, I just didn't really care. Like it was kind of too wrapped up in that mythology for me. Like I just wasn't interested enough. Mason, is that something you share? Or did you join the film overall? But is there just, like Matty says, there's a few details about the way it's kind of put together that will alienate, pardon the pun, some people.
Yeah, I think this is my second time watching the film, and I remember the first time I watched it, I didn't really like delve into it too much. I just appreciated it as a sci-fi film, and you can forget that it is an alien film because although I had it branded as a alien like origin story, there's literally there's no alien in it until, like you said, like the post-credit scene and stuff. You can kind of not forgive it, but in your head you can just pretend it's not even an alien film, basically. Like you said, when it comes to sort of being lost, like with this whole like mythology stuff, I think as the audience, it's very easy to not care about it because only 2 members on the cast actually care about it themselves. The rest is there sort of just to get money. And immediately, as the audience, you're kind of told to not be interested in it because no one else is. So having that as the big push of the sort of film, the storyline, that's like a big issue because if you want us to be as sold as these 2 other characters are in this whole origin story of where like humans come from, at least make it more interesting, or at least make it seem like everyone else would be more gassed to do it. But instead, it's just a chore for everyone else. They're just there for the money. And I think the film just, when you watch it, it's only good after you watch Covenant as well. If you look at it as an alien film, if you look at it as just a sci-fi film, it's good. Like it is a good sci-fi film. But if you look at it within the alien universe, it really doesn't answer a lot of questions until you watch Covenant. And that's what I think makes Covenant a better film, is sort of because of this, but also makes this a much weaker film, in my opinion. There's, like you said, with the plot and stuff as well, you have the old guy who is presumed dead at the beginning and then is revealed to be alive, and it's one of the shittest reveals I've ever seen. No one cares, like literally no one's like, oh my god, you're alive. Like there's so many cast members, like this, like the whole like crew like witnesses it, and then that's when I get really confused because you have Aunt Lysa from Game of Thrones there, and I was totally lost by her motives because I thought she was just a normal member within the team, and then next thing you know, she's there helping the old guy get ready, like in his suit and shit. So I was like, what the fuck, like who's with who on this point? Yeah, I don't know. I think there's quite a few issues that I have with the film, but I don't want to be too negative because the first time I watched it with Matty, like I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and it made me even more gassed to see Covenant. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of issues. Yeah.
I did think Noomi Rapace, who's essentially like an ensemble cast, stacked cast, full of loads of people, probably even more famous than her, and I thought she was really good as ostensibly like the main kind of she's basically the lead, like she's the one left over. And obviously Alien kind of changed the game with Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, like in terms of a female action hero. Like that kind of changed the game, that character in 79 when she first appeared. So having Noomi Rapace, I thought she honored that legacy of the Alien films well with her performance in this film. I don't particularly I don't think it was strong her like dynamic with Logan Marshall Green, who's like her boyfriend or whatever, or husband. But her individually, I thought she was a standout in this film. Ross, is that something you felt watching her? She carried the film well.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a few good performances in this film in general, I think. But I think in like as a whole, Michael Fassbender's probably my favorite performance in this film. At first, I thought it was a bit weird how like it's like a robot, but I think once his character gets developed more, it actually turns out to be a really good character. Yeah, the film in general, it's well directed. It's got some really nice shots in it, some really nice like pans, really well filmed. That's one of the strong aspects of this film. The special effects are actually quite good. But I think I went into this film thinking of it as because I haven't seen it before. I've seen Alien once, which I think when I watched Alien, I think I set my expectations too high when I watched it because I was like, oh, it's going to be amazing. Then I watched it, I was like, oh, it was good. So it kind of fell flat for me, but it's still good. I still enjoyed it. So when I went into this one thinking, oh, it's going to be an Alien film, I shouldn't have done that. And like thinking about it now, it works well as like a standalone movie and like a movie in the same universe as Alien. But you really shouldn't have like Alien in mind when you watch this, because otherwise you just know it's never going to be as good as Alien. So I think that's what I did wrong when watching this. But the movie in general it works like well as like a good sci-fi horror film. It's got enough like codes and conventions of the genres to be like good enough in that. But yeah, I think I didn't enjoy, like say good performances and really nice camera work and really well directed, but I think because I watched it with Alien in mind so much, it kind of fell flat for me in that level, which I kind of want to watch it again and not do that and have like a new experience with the film.
I think the main thing I don't know what I think about the film in terms of Ridley Scott's explanation of why it all happened, which then he got rid of because he felt it was too on the nose. It's actually quite a religious film because obviously the Prometheans, well, the engineers, sorry, not the Prometheans, Prometheus is the name of the ship. The engineers made the humans and then left them to, see how they did. They sent several emissaries back to see how they're doing, and the humans executed the engineers. Then they sent one more engineer back, and this is supposed to be Jesus. And he says to them, you have this long to change your ways, and if you don't change your ways, we're going to kill you. And obviously humans didn't. So what they come across in Prometheus is a military planet that is getting ready to go destroy the human race because they're getting too dangerous and too militant. But unfortunately, the biochemical warfare, the little gooey shit, escapes on their base and then destroys all of the engineers, so they can't do that. And then 2,000 years later, humans manage to get there, and they wake up the one engineer that's still alive, and he tries to get up and go destroy Earth again because he doesn't really. He's like, oh shit, 2,000 years has passed, but fuck it, I'm here to destroy humans because he's military branch and doesn't like humans. I'm not sure what I think about that as an explanation. I feel like the mystery of the film is just more interesting than that being explained. And I feel like if they did explain that in the film, people would be like, that's a bit shit. They could obviously tell he's not Jesus, and then there's a whole list of problems that would come with that.
Okay, get some ratings. Start with Matty.
I gave it an 8.1.
Mason.
I gave it a 6.9.
Ross.
Yeah, I also gave it a 6.9.
I'll give it a 7. Okay, so in terms of our average ratings, we've got Arrival at number 1 with an 8.5, A Quiet Place at 2 with an 8.2, Men in Black at 3 with a 7.7, and Prometheus at 4 with a 7.2. In terms of where they fit in with our overall rankings, Arrival's into the top 10, number 8, Quiet Place 21, Men in Black 43, and Prometheus 49. Okay, our actor of the week. Start with you, Ross.
So I went for Amy Adams. I think in the film she spends a lot of time in the film thinking, obviously, what you think is like PTSD and dealing with the thoughts of her daughter that's constantly going through her head. Obviously, later on, find out that's actually the future, but you don't know at the time, so it doesn't matter. But it's the kind of emotion she manages to convey throughout the film in general. She does really well at kind of dealing with that and bringing that across. So yeah, I went for Amy Adams.
Matty.
I went for Michael Fassbender. I don't feel like his performance is truly realised until you watch the next film, but I feel like there's so much to go into with this film. It works really well.
Mason.
I went for Emily Blunt. I think what she does in A Quiet Place, and like I said, that scene alone when she's in the bath, yeah, she was just sick this week.
Like Ross, I also went for Amy Adams. Another really strong performance. I know she gets a lot of hate. I didn't even realize until quite recently that a lot of people think she's quite dull. But yeah, I think she brings the energy and the intelligence to this performance, and I thought it was really good. Okay, our unique category for the week is the best alien design across the 4 films. Start with you, Mason.
I went for the Alien in Arrival. I think the fact you just don't see it at all, and then I think the most you see it is when Amy Adams gets like picked up. She goes like beyond the screen. I think that's when you get like the best sort of look at the alien, and yeah, I think I just really enjoyed like the unknownness like of it, where you can't really tell. I think it kind of looks like, I want to say, it looks like a squid, and I feel that's what I imagine aliens to look like. So yeah.
Matty.
I went for the alien in A Quiet Place. I feel like that scene when you can see all of the plates on its head open and move, and you can just see it's almost like the beating of a heart, the way its ear responded to all the noises. I just thought it was really intricate and a really interesting design for an alien, and the way it evolved over time to just pick up like the tiniest sounds of like blood pressure. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the way it looked.
Ross.
I went for Arrival as well. It's I think the fact that they kind of kept it mysterious. You never really see what they look like, but it means sometimes it does pay off when you see them like in A Quiet Place. So they do look quite cool, but sometimes you can be like quite underwhelmed by it. But I think them kind of keeping them quite mysterious adds really well to the effects. So yeah, I went for Arrival.
Jeeves. I wish this was a Pop Vinyl award. Ross.
So they already have A Quiet Place Alien Pop Vinyl. So I just looked it up because I was going to pick it, but then I just looked it up. But I suddenly thought that if you had like an Arrival one, right, with like the whatever it looks like a weird squid thing that Mason said, but if you had that on like a smoky box, like in the film, that would look sick. So I thought that would look pretty cool.
That's creative. I went for this John Krasinski screaming in that moment when he protects the kids. Just be him with his beard. Just be like, It'll make a noise as well. It'll be the first one to make a noise. I added that in last minute just to sound more creative. Follow me on Twitter at LeonWayne98 because that's where I post all the stuff now because I could be asked to do the other account. Corona Cinema Podcast.wordpress.com, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean. Next week, erotic thrillers. It's getting hot in here. The Handmaiden, Fatal Attraction, Eyes Wide Shut. Bye.
Cheers.
In a bit.
Bye. Right, I'm going to bed. Good night.
I'm so tired.
Oh, gosh, it's been a long day. Just let me go to bed, all right?
Why are you making fun of him, Ross? You're about to leave.
Shut up, mate. I'm not.